let's realize that it's not the fault of Gen Z for not being able to afford houses that our parents, if they were in our age group today, they would not be able to afford. And I know there is something to be said, and I've talked crap about Gen Z multiple times for, I think, a lack of work ethic that a lot of us possess. And I think a lot of it comes from like cell phone and social media addiction. I know I struggle with that. And
I think our brains are just working differently.
Our brains are a little bit fried. And we were kind of, again, talking before we started recording about how phones and social media has reduced community and reduced human connection that inspires people to work hard and do things for other people and build something together. And now a lot of people aren't necessarily looking to build something together. They aren't necessarily looking to have a family, buy a home, live somewhere permanently, and set your roots down. And so I think that's a whole other cultural problem, but specifically economically, the boomers were not sending their best, okay?
To be fair to the boomers, they are the first generation to do this, but they are not the last, because
we're going to be way worse. We're going to be way worse.
Generation has made the same fatal mistake that the boomers did, which is to ask the government to come in and like solve problems, which generally doesn't tend to work. And for many different things, it has made the problem worse, specifically student loans, but
right. And so I hope this is not misinterpreted as a like dislike of people in that age group, because I know so many sweet old people. I'm sure that a lot of my followers, whenever I've done polls on who follows me on Twitter, at least half are Gen X and boomers. So I have I have like a large following of older people, which I like because they can see what I'm talking about. And usually they're not blind to it. They know what they did, honestly, and they know what they collectively have done. But like you said, this is not singling out boomers as in like this is the only generation that will ever do this or has ever done something like this. Gen X, millennials, Gen Z will ultimately show worse impacts on our children and our descendants.
Yeah, and I also want to add that, it might not even be that boomers I never want to assign collective blame for something that specific individuals did. Like, it was the politicians, right? But yeah, I actually think my following is the reverse. I have more millennial and Gen Z followers because I can't stop tweeting about Taylor Swift.
My boomers followed me in like my MAGA days, so I don't know if I had to start Twitter over, they would follow me again, but I still have them holding on.
They've held on. That's so nice. That's so nice.
So I have a bunch of like kindly grandparents, like, oh, good job, Olivia. Like I literally, I remember I used to have people like trying to set me up with like their grandsons and stuff like on there. Like that's the type of people who follow me, who I love.
That's so sweet.
But you're right. You can't. I know you can't assign collective guilt because that's wrong. But on some level, you do get what you vote for. And I'm not saying that they knowingly voted, like, within the past 100 years. I'm not saying people knowingly voted and supported Social Security knowing it was going to be what it is today, or knowingly supported the regulation of healthcare knowing what it was going to be like today. And the same thing with like zoning laws and housing markets and endless spending that people, Democrats and Republicans in Congress have voted on. I don't think that they predicted that this would be the end result. So I don't think it was people like boomers and silent generation when voting had malintent for their children and grandchildren. That makes zero sense. But their main issue was trusting the government.
Right. And I think like hindsight is 2020. Like I can look at these decisions that were made and say, well, obviously, if you pass these laws to benefit a certain subgroup in the short term, it's going to have effects on other groups or people in the long term. But that's me saying that in hindsight. But I think what's worrying about our generation in particular is that we do have a lot of problems and we are facing a lot of economic problems. And we are kind of leaning even more into what previous generations did policy-wise, and what we're calling for, I think, would exacerbate these problems. But one thing that we don't think about enough is that Americans were actually really privileged to experience a lot of the benefits of having a free market. Like I don't think we've ever had a truly free market, but we've
As free
gotten
as
pretty
it gets.
close. Yeah, we've gotten pretty close. And, you know, older generations enjoyed a lot of the benefits of that. And I'm gonna be honest, like after traveling to Argentina and seeing what it's really like to live and in a country that's experiencing severe economic calamity, like we still have it really good here. So I do want to introduce kind of a hopeful element. Like things are actually not terrible.